Imagine a small town with all the eldest people where has no sight of the youth. The villagers are probably really lonely, but they still have to fight hard every single day to survive. What if I tell you this village actually exists in Russia? With that in mind, hello everybody. Today, Team Russia will propose a potential idea of how to create a brighter future for Kalak using solar energy. Throughout our presentation, we'll go over the background purpose, problem in Kalak, potential solution, implementation, financial analysis, and conclusion. Background, as you can see in the map, in the red dot there, Kalak is located at the end of the railroad in that red dot, and the Kalak villagers' life really depends upon the drain that arrives several times throughout the week with supplies. Life there is really poor of infrastructure and education, and the worst of all, electricity is only available for a few hours a day. Therefore, we would like to provide an autonomous electricity to Kalak by installing solar panels because we do believe that renewable energy is the best way and the only answer to continuously provide electricity for the resident there at a really low cost. And in the long run, this can improve the daily life of the inhabitant of Kalak, providing source of electricity utility, and also help the transportation be more reliable because right now they're using the old diesel engines, which is also can be really dangerous. And if adaptations can be made, so could the train could also use electricity and provide more reliable source of transportation. And with this, by providing utility and better transportation, it potentially can bring back life to Kalak because it can attract the younger people to come back and create opportunities in the land.
When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, it tumbled Russia's economy, and the village Kalach was struck even harder. Forest industry was the main source of employment, but later on the industry slumped and the people started to seek for job opportunities out of the village. Almost 3 decades ago, about 600 people lived in the village, but now, according to the 2015 statistics, only 12 people stayed here. Because of the lack of work, infrastructure, and education, most people left the village. There are no telephone communication. Diesel-based electricity is supplied twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. Sometimes there can be a problem with central electric station, and no electricity can be seen for some days. The main mode of transport is train, and it arrives 4 times throughout the week, with passengers and supplies, because the road travel is impossible. Train itself has no light system, and while the engines are fitted with plows, snow is a problem on the tracks. The train cars are heated by wood-fired stoves, often fired by the passengers itself. The last shop is closed and there are no schools in the city, in this village, so students must travel by train to attend nearby schools. Most students' rides take around 40 minutes. I think it's enough time to study for a test, and there is a place for sleeping in the train. Now the town has been neglected. Life is severe, simple and self-sustaining. All vegetables are grown within the greenhouses, and the sheep are the primary source of nutrition. Rail push cars became the famous mode of transportation when there are no trains. Also, railway is a primary source of employment. Retired people rely on their monthly state pensions. The population is completely separated from society. However, despite the isolation, They have sense of pride and call this remote village home. Granting them access to more electricity could improve their day-to-day life without forcing them to leave their village. The remaining inhabitants know that they live in an abandoned location, and the resources they have are limited, electricity being supplied only occasionally. These means of transportation are inclined to malfunction and could benefit from more reliable technology. If low-cost electricity were to become available to them for longer periods of time, this could be used to increase several aspects of their daily life. Hence, we want to provide autonomous electricity to Kalach by installing solar panels. We believe that renewable energy, solar energy in this case, is the best way to get continuous electricity for the residents of Kalach at a low cost.
So the project proposition is that we'd like to grant the inhabitants of Kalach more timely access to electricity, and thus we aim to install a 7.6 kilowatt solar panel installation next to the village. Instead of just off-shifting all the unused energy to the grid, some battery storage units will be needed for in this case. That way, all the excess energy could get stored and will be able to be used at a later date. Now, this installation would require about 50 square meters, which should be able to fit pretty closely to the station. Now, just for illustration's sake, the highlighted blue rectangle is actually a cleared zone of 20 meters times 20 meters, which should definitely be large enough to house all the necessary solar panels, battery units, and the necessary replacement parts. The orange line, that shows actually the railway station in Kalach, which will be used to unload all materials and gear. Due to its remote location, this actually means that all transportation will need to be done via the railway line. And that brings us to the actual project implementation. Now, given that none of us bar Yedel understand Russian, we'll actually need to find a good Russian interpreter. This will allow us to partake in the necessary business meetings and negotiations necessary later on in the project. We'll also need to find a lawyer specialized in Russian contracting advice to ensure that everything happens legally. Their knowledge should definitely come in handy when preparing our initial negotiation strategy. The second phase will be the sponsorship acquisition phase. Now, solar panel companies or utility providers must be contacted in order for us to be able to convince them of our case. If it works, we'd be able to acquire sponsoring. Otherwise, we will need to do some adjustments before we try to persuade them again. In case the solar panel companies aren't convinced, we'll need to go to a larger organization such as the World Bank or the UN. Phase 3 will be the implementation phase. So this is where the actual installation will have to be planned out and where logistics and cost decisions need to be made. Questions such as who, what, where, when, and all those types of things will need to be answered. We'll need to be able to guarantee that some of the local villages can get training regarding the solar panels, and a decision will have to be made as to who will be responsible for the panels in the long run and will fix the damage. And after that comes the fun step, namely the actual construction of the solar panel farm. So the final phase will be the follow-up phase, in which we'll be responsible for monitoring that everything actually keeps functioning fluidly in Kalach. So we'll need to establish a contact person. But we'd also like to evaluate our own team performance. Based on that, we should be able to find out what we did right, what we did wrong, how we might be able to improve, and what we would do different given the chance to do another such project.
Our group will be seeking short-term funding from two major areas. The first is the World Bank, which is an international financial institution that offers funds to developing countries. In addition, we will seek funding from the Russian Ministry of Energy, which is responsible for drafting and implementing government policies and legal regulations that are related to energy. We will work with both of these institutions to get the project moving forward. In addition, with the Russian Ministry of Energy, we will need them to approve our project once we get it started. Moving on with long-term funding, we will get long-term funding from the Russian Federation and the local governments. Once we are able to show the value and the need of our project, we will hopefully use both of these institutions to help implement our project in other areas of Russia that could utilize the solar panels. For future funding, we are aware that our project has the potential to be a success or unsuccessful. If it is a success, we will continue to seek funding from the Russian Federation and the local government. But in addition, this leaves the opportunities for stakeholders and other energy companies to become partners in the project. If our project is unsuccessful, we will work again with the World Bank to see if they are able to offer any additional fundings to make our project a success. In addition to the World Bank, we will also work with energy companies and any other stakeholders that might be able to offer any funding, resources, and knowledge in order to get our project off the ground.
This humanitarian project is quite ambitious, and financing this effort could potentially make or break its development and its related success. Our goal here is to harness this energy in the most cost-effective means possible. As the mainstream markets widen due to energy scarcity, solar energy has become more affordable and economical, which is aiding for the betterment of our project. As they say in real estate, location, location, location. That's also vital to our costs, as this placement affects the amount of electricity the solar panel is able to create and convert into usable energy. We also have to take into account the solar panel prices. These are often listed by watts per unit. However, we have to make sure that we can collect the most kilowatt hours as possible for the life of the unit. And it is also important to note that these solar panels will actually only last 20 to 25 years per unit. So we have to make sure that we take that into account too, as we try to figure out the financing for future concepts. Now we progress into the actual expenditures. This is where the rubber meets the ground. And we convince our investors here in the room the value of this specific project. There are currently 12 residents in Kalesh. The average Russian uses 930 kilowatts of energy per year. That leaves us with 11,160 kilowatts to sustain the entire population in the town for a 1-year period. As you can see from the slides, we're going to need a 7.59 kilowatt installation unit. Basically, this is all the material that's involved in putting this apparatus together. We're going to need 4 Tesla battery units. These will store the additional electricity the panels collect. As you can see from these figures, this total project cost alone for the main expenditures will be $64,602 US. Our goal on the actual performance side is to provide the project team with flexibility to adjust to the scope of work in response to project specifics and evolving needs. Services will be provided on a time and material basis. This may change due to the town's directions and specifics, and the budget can also be reallocated as needed. Our team will consist of leaders in solar advisory services with technical expertise and deep involvement in solar policies. Our unique perspective will help this project move forward to reduce economic, environmental, contractual, and other associated risks. We will conduct site assessments, feasibility studies, financial analysis, legal review of leases, purchase agreements, and execute procurement documents. Russian interpreters are also needed to help leverage negotiations and establish long-standing relationships. The total estimate for these costs would be approximately $37,500. Bring our total project costs to $102,102, including the material cost and associated project costs. We understand this is such a small town, and why choose Kalesh and not a more densely populated town, especially with these associated costs? Everyone deserves the basic necessities of life, and this is the perfect town to begin as we transgress along to refine our processes and expand our operations with the goal of improving society and demonstrating a service for humanity, regardless of its size or its reach capacities. These panels will revolutionize one town at a time and hopefully be the beacon of innovation and possibly even create future engineers in the process.